Well, come on in. You want to know about how to make custard cake. Lori, hello. Let's start off with this. There's going to be a couple of things that need to be explained because this actually takes about 2 days to actually complete. But what I'll do is I'll try to cut it down. And we'll start off with the beginning of it. This is custard cake we're making here, that very secret recipe that I don't want you to share with anybody, but you're welcome to try in your own kitchen. We're going to start off with the cake mix. If you want to look real closely at it, this is more or less what we prefer using when we make this dish. Look very closely at your store. It has to say pudding in the mix is preferable. A golden butter recipe, yellow cake. Pillsbury is preferable, but any other brand is okay. So, and on the back it's pretty basic. 1 cup of water, 1/3 a cup of butter, and 3 eggs. Now there might be some differences. Don't be alarmed whether it's 1/3 of butter or 1/3 of vegetable oil. Make sure it's vegetable oil, because if not, you're going to find that it's a very big nightmare. All right, assuming that you mixed everything up in a nice manner with preferably beater. Do it for about maybe 5 to 10 minutes tops, mix it, and then what you're going to use is a bundt pan to do this. Having said that, this is the, give me a second. This is warm. All right. This is a bundt pan in case you haven't seen one before. I assume you have. One thing I do suggest doing, it is very important. You're welcome to look at it. In order to get a real good coating, and what I mean by that is you're going to have to flip this thing sideways and slide it out. And the best thing to do this with will be Baker's Joy. Anything in that realm is okay, but the baking spray with flour is preferably desired because of the flavoring and the process, which I'm about to demonstrate. This, what you're going to need is a larger plate to flip this into. And you're probably going to be baking this for about, I would say, a good 39 to 43 minutes, as it would probably say, but you determine. And the way we do that is by basically taking one of the picks here that you see, and you stick it into the cake, and if there's none of the cake mix that sticks to the toothpick, you know you're ready to take it out. So leave it at that. The actual color of the surface of the cake may not matter. Sometimes it might come out darker than others. During this, for this recipe, it really doesn't make much of a difference for burning. But get ready. I'm going to show it's still a little warm, but assuming you've baked the cake, this is how we would actually make it or perform the next step. As long as it's not too hot, you flip it over, slide out. Okay, put that to the side, like this, and move it over here. You're going to flip it, lay it straight here, move the bundt pan out of the way. Alright, now this part is where it gets real interesting. I'll use this one. What you're going to have to do is, in the center of the cake, you're going to cut it completely in half, and take your time, slowly cutting. Okay. Make sure it gets all the way over, even out as much as possible. You want to get be very careful because it starts getting very delicate at this point. It's obviously still warm and flimsy. All right. Both hands, you have to be very careful because it will split. Flip it over, And what you're going to do is you're going to apply, I like to use this particular brand. It's up to you. It's an Italian liquor, a very nice premium type of Amaretto. And the recipe calls out for like a 1/4 a cup. Really what I like to do is you take the tip of your finger and put it over and just kind of make sure you coat it. If you want to come closer and see how I'm doing it, that's up to you. Just kind of drop it in, not too much. You don't want to saturate too much because when you do go to enjoy the dish, you don't want your stomach feeling a little bit funny because of the heavy amount of alcohol. And besides, it's very sweet. More importantly, this will be the, let's say this is the actual container for the cake. So make sure you have this ready and prepared for the cake itself once you finish all the pieces. What we'll do is I'll put this piece over here. When you finish coating both sides, you're basically going to have to put the cake back together as it was before you cut it and flipped it over. Let's put this aside here. That was side 1 on the inside. This is side 2. And actually there's 3 sides to this that you're going to be coating with the Amaretto. This goes on very carefully back. Try not to let it cut or split. For the most part, that worked out, hopefully. And actually what we can do is this. We can put the last dosage of this cake in after we flip it. Very carefully. Drop it in, let it be evened out, as you can see. It might break, but as long as it's pretty much intact, you're good. That's all that matters. One last little drop, and we're good. All right. We spent a lot of time on the video. I was hoping to have a little bit more time on the other parts, but we need to keep moving because I don't want the video to be extremely long. So we're going to put the cake mix here on the side. Move this here. And we're going to get on to making the custard side of this. So let's do this. Follow me on this side. The recipe calls out for 6 cups of milk, whole milk preferably. You turn it on, and what you're going to do is you're going to make the heat almost to a form of simmered because you need the time to actually let it heat up. So I'm going to pour in, this is 2 cups, and I'll add another 2 in a second, as you can see. It's 4. And that makes a total of 6 cups. Okay. Now while that is heated up, I'm going to put the milk back in the fridge. We're going to work on the eggs and the sugar. So now what we're going to do is, I like to use the egg separator, and it makes it real convenient because if you're a person that likes to use egg whites to make omelets or some other dish that uses a lot more eggs, you can actually make it a more cholesterol healthy dish. In fact, we just had some omelets before this, and they were really good. Okay, so we're going to separate. You're going to have 12 eggs that you're going to have to break. And what we'll do is we're going to put them in here. Have another bowl separately just for the egg mix. We'll start right now. These really are helpful. Because if you do try to use your hands, it does get very complex, or it gets a little aggravating, not to mention your hands are going to be full of yolk, and a lot of people don't really care for that. Let's go through these fairly quickly if I can. Sometimes we'll have a little mistake there. That happens, don't worry about it. We'll wash it out. You can actually use a second one if you have. Consider that one a mess up. Gets it all the way down to where all you have is just the yolk. Some of these guys are a little more difficult than others. And if it has a little egg white in it, it's not going to hurt it. However, I'm just going to make sure I have enough yolk in it, so I'm going to grab an additional egg from the fridge, so we shorten the custard up any. So that made up, well, it was 12, but this will actually make 12 once I pull this one up. One final one. So now we can honestly say we have 12 yolks. Alright. If you want to come take a look at it up close to see how this looks, just to get a glimpse of it, while that's being here. Alright. The next step will be to add 1 cup of sugar. Okay? As you can see, I already had one measured out already, etc., etc. You just pour it in. It doesn't really matter. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky. I like to use 1/4 teaspoon of salt in the mix as well. So what I'm going to do is, I don't really have a special container for it, so I'll use one of my salt shakers for cooking. Get a measurement of 1/4 teaspoon. And just slowly sprinkle it in. It's no big deal. That's done. And now all we have left is to mix it in, which, in a second, let me see if I can get this adjusted. Yeah. All right. Now, we're going to have, so there's actually, now, a dozen eggs, 1 cup of sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. This would be a good time to mix this. Now, my mother and I kind of get a little bit of in a debate about what is probably the best way to scramble or to mix the egg yolks up. I still prefer to use, and you can bring it to a fine pasty texture. Only problem is if it gets too much air, it tends to get a little bit questionable when you go to pour it into the milk. But we'll give it a shot. I'll just show you what it looks like. See, it's getting a little thicker. Don't worry about it. And if you want, you can increase the speed a little bit more. You can see the color's starting to get a little bit lighter. Turn it a little bit. Alright. For the sake of going too thick, I'll leave it at this state that it's in now. It's pasty. I like to use a, I guess you would call it a spread. So, and I just like to push it down a little bit on the edges. It's up to you. Just trying to keep it a little neat. And let that sit there for a minute. What we're going to do is we're going to go look over at the milk. For the milk, when you stir, I suggest using a spoon that doesn't have any holes in it. Something that's actually going to, a dipper. And one with a little, so let's take a look and see how we are here. Notice it's a little scaly. I don't know if you can see with the camera, but you see it starts to get a little scaly. That's a good sign that we're getting to the point where it's just about ready. Alright. Mix it around a little bit. Make sure it's not too hot. Again, like I said, it's simmer or just above a simmering state. Turn a little bit. Let me get this out of the way here. Some here. Some water there. Turn. And we're just about ready to start mixing it. Now this is where it starts getting difficult. The most difficult part of this entire recipe is the part that I'm about to demonstrate to you. It's going to call out that you actually have to sit there and watch the mixture after you do put the entire batch of eggs and sugar into the pot of 6 cups of milk. You're only going to have so much time before it turns, and I have to explain it to you like that because that's where it gets very difficult. If you let it cook too long in the mix, or if you forget about it, you can ruin the entire custard. So make sure you sit at it, and I would say probably about a good window of 15 minutes once you introduce the eggs and sugar into the batch. So let's see how we're looking yet. I might need a little bit more time with that. Just increase the heat slightly. Now this will give me a chance to explain. There is a step to this that is not added, and you will forget it if you don't put it out. But I've done the recipe so many times it's in my head now. What you're going to need is also almond extract. Now you can add it before anything else, but my opinion is because it's so hot and that with the alcohol that's inside and the flavor, it will evaporate unless you put it towards the end, right before the turning point of when egg and the milk gets real thick. That's the time I think it's best. And what you're going to do is you're going to add another dosage of 1/4 a teaspoon. Don't put too much in there because it will overpower it. Stuff's very potent. So we'll put this on the side. It looks like we're almost ready to go. Yeah, we're getting there. What I like to do for a style, because if you only got 2 hands in the kitchen here, which I do, I won't be, I'll just assume that that's what you have because you're going to do this on your own. Stir to the point where it kind of creates a little current flow. And what I'm going to do is, as it's turning, I'm going to let it move in. Keep the temperature the same. We're going to slowly, as it's coming in, as it's turning, we're going to introduce the egg into it. And if you look real closely, you'll see it's really starting to cover it. But you don't want to spend too much time putting it in. This is why it's complicated. You're really on a time frame to put all this in and to keep it moving. So let's try to get this in. More a little bit. Yeah. Make sure we get more the better, I always say. Alright, let's consider that done. This in the bench too. Alright, and this is what we need to start stirring, and don't forget to stir, it's very important. Right now it looks like the custard of the egg is actually taking over the pot, the milk, but if you look closely, it's going to start turning lighter again. That's because it's mixing in and it's starting to thin out slightly because of the heat from the milk. Alright. And at a point, you're going to have to stop for a second. And remember the cake with the amaretto inside? You're going to want to keep it real close by because if you don't, it's going to be a real catastrophe when you forget about it. There's a lot of thinking, a lot of remembering of what you have to do. If you make too wrong of a move, it can get bad. So kind of prepare yourself for all the steps beforehand. And as you can see now, it's getting a little bit lighter. And you're going to see me, like right now, start focusing on the surface of the dipper. See how it's looking? It's still kind of light, but it's running very quickly. And if you look at the actual coating on the spoon, it's kind of slightly coated evenly. But when you know truly that it's ready, it'll change a little bit. It'll start getting a little blotchy, slightly. Don't let it get too much. If you do that, you know you're past the point. But that's a good indicator that the custard is ready. Let's give it a second. Make sure it's not too much. But it looks like we're almost to that point right now. A little bit more. Keep on stirring. It can take anywhere from 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes, depending on the temperature of the pot. See, it still looks like it's a little more time. Start getting your extract, your almond extract, ready. Okay. And if you want to look again at what the pot that I'm using here, it's plastic. My suggestion, it's not the best to use that, but for right now, that's all I've got on me. But I don't suggest using stainless steel pots because of the heat distribution, I believe it is. I just know that when you put the stainless steel pot into the fridge after when it's time to cool the cake down, it doesn't make the best surface or the best matter. And it looks like we're about ready. So what I'm going to do is get this guy. Take your time for a second. You've got a few seconds. You'll have about, at the point it turns, you'll probably have 2.5 minutes. Maybe 3 at the most. You won't have any more than that. It's very, very quick when the transition takes place. And And you're going to notice once you drop it in, it's going to smell very different. The custard's going to start, there we go. See the surface looking a little bit more blotchier? And we're about ready. Alright, I'm going to move this out of the way. You might want to come stand over here on this side of me. It'd probably be better right here. Because when it comes in, you're going to want to see it. Now, my mother likes to do it where when it is ready, like right now, it's just ready. It's just about time. She likes to pour it like this on occasion and evenly pour it out. Me personally, I like to pour it over it, be very gentle. Just pour it in on there, just don't let it splash too much, but take your time, you're fine. Just as long as you get the coating on the top of it. And if you look real closely, it's starting to get real thick now. That's how you know when it's just past that point. So I just made the deadline for pouring it on top. See how it looks when it comes out? It's real thick. It's past that point. So you have very little time to make sure you get it right. Otherwise, it gets too thick and it really doesn't come out the best. It doesn't, not to say that it doesn't taste good if it is real clumpy, but it does make a big difference after you cool it off and you serve it with that real delicate texture. If you want to look one more time while I'm washing the cake, how it looks right now, it's settled in, it's setting. Now what you want to do at this point is, it is hot, obviously. But you're going to have to get to a point when it cools off. It's a very important step to actually have the cake sitting in a flat surface. And what you're going to want to eventually do is have aluminum wrap is the best thing. Make sure you cover this thing, you airtight seal it as much as possible. You don't want the element of the fridge getting into it with the extra humidity or any other odors that might be lingering in your fridge, which I don't have any. It's not saying anything about my fridge, but it's it helps keep everything clear and clean and tasting as fresh as possible when this does come out. When you do put this into the fridge, you're looking at a good 6 to 8 hours, I would suggest, for it to cool off and to be ready. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the last step. Even though this won't be ready for 8 hours, I'll show you how to do the last step, which is basically taking heavy whipped cream, if you want to look real closely at it. That'll be the source of cream that you're using, with about, I would say, anywhere from 1/4 to 1/8 a cup of sugar. Really, it depends on you. However sweet or light you want it to be, it's all up to you. I like to use a cup because it's not overbearing. It gives a real good flavor to it. But let me go ahead and do this. I'll show you how I do it. I like to use at least 2 of the sheets in order to truly cover it properly. You catch it around the brim here and you work your way around. Okay? And here, do it one more time. Do another sheet evenly. Good. And as you can see, cover the remaining part of it. Try to make it as tight as a drum before you put it in. Okay? Nice and around. All around, where very very little air is going to be able to get in. Other than this one spot, and you can go over it again if you feel like you need to. That's no big deal. All right. It feels a little warm. Oh. Okay. And give me a second. Let me do this. Looks like, and this was part of the problem, the bowl will get a split in it because it's plastic. Excuse me one second. This was an emergency, but this actually has happened before, and it actually came out good anyway, but I'm good at accidents in the kitchen. So what we'll do is we'll actually put it in a second bowl, and once again we'll attempt to put it in the fridge. Okay? And it'll sit here for about 6 to 8 hours. We'll close it up. And now, let me clean this real quick. I apologize for the mess. Get some of this custard up. All right. And now we'll go with one more deal. Let me wash this out very quick. Oh, there we go. Pretty much ready to go. Nice little wash. All right. All right. And there we are. We're back again. Remove this. All right. We're going to open up, and the quantity of heavy whip on the top of any of my custard cakes is about a pint. You can put a little more in there, but a pint is the required amount. So we'll pour it in, as you can see. Nice. A pint. And sugar. Any granulated refined sugar. Fine. Pour in here. All right. Looks like we got about a little extra sugar, but it looks like we just add a cup. And let me go and get these arms taken care of. They should be well rinsed off by now. Good. Some soap. All right. You can just slowly pour it into the bowl. 1 cup. And slow, because it will flip out of the bowl for the first seconds or so as it gets a little bit thicker. And just to save us some time on the video footage, I'll increase the speed a little more. See it getting thicker, obviously, that's what you need to do. I like to make it extra thick because it stays that way. It's an extra layer to the cake that I think that most people like when they enjoy it. So I'm going to make it the way I like it. You can do a little less than I'm doing. It all is your preference at this point. But as you can see, it's starting to get real thick. like the idea of it feeling like a nice big, almost like icing, but not as thick, but it helps paste it just right. And unlike Cool Whip, and that's another thing, I would not be using any form of Cool Whip for this recipe. It's just that is more or less an insult to this recipe if you top it off with that. It doesn't help because the flavor of it is a little too sweet and it just kind of takes it off. There's just some things that you don't want to put pressurized canned whipped cream on, or any product for that matter. But I'll show you. Give me a few more seconds. It ought to be ready. See how thick it's getting? Why don't you come over and look a little bit closer? Look at that. See how thick it's getting? Almost like a form of mashed potatoes. And I like it just to the point where it's about to break. And we're about there now. Alright. Once again, I like to use this. This is the best thing that you would probably use to paste it on the top, but I mean, however you see fit. But if you want to taste it for yourself to see how sweet it is, be my guest. And that's pretty much it. The following day, after it's cooled off for 6 to 8 hours, apply it only at that point. Do not do it before then because the cream will obviously melt. And apply it. Put the foil back on once you have done it, and you can actually serve it right away after that point, or before then. You don't have to put it back on, but if you are going to refrigerate it, make sure you put the foil back on top. And that's my family recipe for custard cake. I hope you enjoyed it as big of a catastrophe as it was. Nice seeing you, and look forward to your take. Bye-bye.